So welcome to the veranda. I'm Kath Drake. The veranda is quality poetry events and mindfulness as well. There's lots of other stuff coming up on the veranda. We've got Dive into Poetry, Reading and Writing together with a new theme each time. And there is one this Sunday, which is on my website if you haven't, if you want to be doing some poetry on Sunday. Also Poetry and Mindfulness. There's a series coming up in the new year, which is half an hour, I think, of bliss in the mornings if you're in the UK, for writers or for anyone. Lots more poetry masterclasses coming up with the best poetry teachers, and of course more climate of change workshops coming up next year, which I'll tell you more about shortly. I'll put in a minute a link so that you can have a look at what's coming up on the veranda. There we go. So the climate of change poetry reading. This is our second and final challenge this year. Many of us have been writing together about the climate and environmental emergency in an intensive, exhilarating sort of ride in June and July, and then more recently in October and November. So there's been about 140 poets who took part, would you believe? And just on our private Facebook page alone, where we've been posting our poems and commenting, there's been 440 poems written and over 2,500 comments that we've been making and to support each other's poems. Amazing, a really brilliant and growing and supporting community. And that doesn't include poems that were written in workshops and those people who are writing on their own who are not in the workshops or on Facebook. So there's lots of other poets out there who are taking the challenge. So just want to acknowledge all of you poets out there, many that are here tonight, that who've been part of it, who've been part of what people are telling me has been a supportive community, that it's engaging during a very difficult time and being part of something bigger. And also one of the comments people said to me is, I feel less alone. Which I think is true, because it's a difficult issue, isn't it? And it's much better when we're together often. Now, this challenge is inspired by Margaret Atwood's quote, which is, I think calling it climate change is rather limiting. I would rather call it the everything change. And I think we do need an everything change. We need to question lifestyle, structures, culture, and we've been trying to create this climate of change together, deepening our understanding, to think and express in new ways, to explore the root causes and perpetuating forces of the emergency, seeking to influence with the expression of poetry, conversations and actions. And as I said, I think we're better together with our heads together on this. A lot of the poems that I think we need to be written about the crisis have not been written yet. So we need this deeper shift in putting Earth first, in putting our life support system first, to have a significant and lasting positive shift in our collective mindset. We also need to think about adapting as best we can to the changes that are coming. And that's important, looking after ourselves and our communities in the midst of this trauma, and climate justice, of course, which is also really important. We know that climate change disproportionately affects Indigenous people and people of colour. So taking action and having agency is also very key, and all these aspects were woven into our challenge. I just want to say hello to Heather Daniel and acknowledge the Emergence Foundation, who generously funded this bold and ambitious project. We just couldn't have done it without them. They aim to support projects that are engaged and are committed to uplift of individuals and organisations and the culture at large, to effect a shift in consciousness and perspective, a force of positive change in the world. And I do think that all of you have helped embody that in this project. It's also meant that people could join the challenge for free, and we could reach out much further than we thought we could have. It's also meant that I could put a lot more time into researching, I guess, and developing the challenge as well, which has made a huge difference to me. So 2 intensive challenges this year, and there'll be more workshops you can sign up for next year, and hopefully more workshops and challenges in the later half of next year when I've had a bit of a rest. So I hope what you get from this reading is that you'll find new ways into expressing problems and solutions about the crisis. So tonight the readers come mostly from the workshop series. We've got 14 readers from the challenge, reading one poem each, including me. And then we've got our fantastic guest poet, Craig Santos Perez, an Indigenous poet who is zooming in from Hawaii. And I think he's really been leading the way, I think, in inventive ways about the crisis for many years, and has been a huge inspiration to me. So let us kick off with some poems, shall we? We're really lucky to, I'm going to introduce you, the poets, in groups of 3. And the first poet is Kate Potts, who has been our fantastic guest poet, who's been rallying a force for good on our Facebook page. So huge thanks to Kate. She's got 2 brilliant books with Blood Axe. Kate's in Stroud in Gloucestershire, and she's with Baby Jude. Clementine E. Burnley is in Edinburgh in Scotland, and she's after Kate. And then we've got Janet Harper in London. Welcome, Kate.
Thanks very much, Kath. Yeah, it's lovely to see everyone's faces after a lot of Facebooking. So I'm going to read a poem that I wrote the first draft of from an exercise in one of Kath's workshops. And it was in the first lockdown when there was a lot less noise from planes and cars, and the wildlife suddenly seemed a lot bolder. I was living in London at the time. And it's kind of about trying not to project onto nature, which is kind of impossible, but you know, we can try. And also being in the moment. So I think also inspired by Kath's kind of mindfulness focus. Sorry. So this is called The Real Bird. Not a Sunday pink pedalo with a fiberglass arching neck, not a fairground mannequin glued on nylon feathers, mechanical pistons and glass eye, not a cursed enchanted human daughter with sorry beak and pinned wings, or a brutal god in disguise, or a ballerina, taffeta, razor's edge, wire. Not one for sorrow, two for joy. No flapping omen or ghoul, not a human ghost migrating from the underworld, no pecking swarm that blocks the sun, not siege nor charm, but bird, bold and tall on the reservoir path. There's something you want to say. You lift a webbed foot to scratch your oxters, your waxy feathers, not honk, quack, grate or rattle. More like cricket's wings in the dusk, staccato, a blue repeated call. I'm trying to listen, listen, listen. Thank you.
Yeah. Yay, Jude. Clementine.
Hi, thanks very much, Kath. My poem is responding to the idea of an imagined world, I think, I'd say, to what could be. And in it, I try to place myself in relationship to my history, I think, in relationship to the world around me. It's called Flight Distance. I want to be with the earth, how I imagine a wolf is with the earth, surrendering to the moment, feet finding the ground. A wolf can range 1,000 miles in an easy sequence of movements, surrendering to motion, finding the moment the earth pushes back. The way I sit in a familiar seat is how I imagine a wolf meets the earth. In the photograph, the wolf seems relaxed. I notice the way her jaw lolls to spill her tongue. How would it be to see the earth the way I imagine the earth sees a wolf, hearing the earth the way I imagine the wolf hears a field, as a chorus, repeating between the straight lines the dry stone walls make in the landscape. How I imagine the earth holds the wolf with a loose touch is not how walls hold a field. I don't know how a wolf understands a nettle. After a storm has startled the forest, the fallen trees leave open spaces. On my daily walks, I watch as nettles grow up over the gaps. I imagine a wolf as a dream of forest. I wonder how nettles understand where tree roots have been, how a wood meets itself. 10,000 years ago, my ancestors hunted hyenas and lions through rainforests in the Scottish Highlands. How should I be with nettle, wolf, and tree? What is the safe distance from which to meet the dreaming under my feet?
Hi, my name's Janet and I live in Forest Hill in London. The poem I'm going to read was, it came from a prompt about carbon footprints and offsetting. And the more I read about offsetting, the more I thought it detracts from the reality that our footprint is lasting and can't really be offset. And what we're doing is just trying to understand the impact that we have and where that impact is going to take us. So as part of the research that I did for that, I came across a wonderful word which was new to me. And the word is ichneumon, which means the reading of traces of footsteps to determine the nature and peculiarities of what made them. So that word became the title of my poem. Ichneumon. We have taken up the reading of footprints. Tracing tracks back, we stare at vestiges left in mud and wonder. It is a divination of sorts, to discover the nature of what has passed here, left this print in the path, turning to fossil, foretelling futures that cannot be imagined. We ask, what made this mark that will not be erased? What passion? What madness?
Oh, thank you, Janet, Clementine, Kate. They're great, aren't they? And so different, so many different voices. Yes, what made this mark indeed. The next three readers we have is Patricia Foster McKinlay, who's in London. Then we're winging over to France with Karina Fiorini, and then we're back in London with Jo Mission. Welcome, Patricia.
Hello, good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Patricia Foster McKinlay, and similarly to Janet, I'm also from Forest Hill in Southeast London. Yeah, what a coincidence. So it's an honor to be here at the Climate of Change reading tonight. My first time on the workshops. So the piece that I'm going to share was in response to one of our exercises on ecocide. And the piece is called A Question of Ecocide While Driving Through North Devon. What is an ecocide, I ask? You tell me, you blast through a phlegmy cough out of the open driver window as we ride a humpback bridge, wheels churning through mud from water that swirled over the riverbanks beneath us. I say, in a cafe this morning, I tail off and remember you sipped chamomile and I lemongrass tea, and we stuffed ourselves with vegan clotted cream and gluten-free scones. I heard a 20-something lady say to her friend, the river burst its banks only last week, you know. The friend responds, lots of crap in that river, sometimes fox or red squirrel roadkill, just tossed over. The ladies shook their heads as the steam rose from their cups. Now the sat-nav on my phone tells me we are near Linton, the north coast of Devon, as we squeeze down a tiny road. Look, we can see Welsh from here, you point through the window. Where? I say. Look, over there, you prod air. Who says it's Wales? I ask. Look out, you fool! I shout hard. You break as a duck waddles across the narrow tarmac, herding baby ducklings ahead of her. Our skid and jerk forward. Through stretched fingers, we watch beyond our bumper in silence. The waft of black and brown feathers, they rise and descend. Then the quickening of webbed feet to the waiting roadside. Thank you. Next, we're going to have Karina Fiorini.
Thank you, Patricia. I'm Karina. I live in France, near the Moselle River, but I'm originally from the island of Malta. The poem that I'm going to read is inspired by overfishing and fish farming, which is something which is leaving quite an impact worldwide. Regatta. It was Victory Day in Malta last September, when I realized I was a tuna. I overheard a date-skinned fisherman on a blue and yellow lutsu. I couldn't wrap my head around it. What does it mean anyway? I'm a tuna. In the mild waters of the Med, Atlantic or Pacific, I run free. I feel free. I don't need a corner office. I have the open sea, where I lunge at squids in the cool night depths, and at herrings in the shallow honey mornings. I want my freedom, this is me. But my folks, what's left of them? My gills, my life, my family colonized in cages, crowded and fat, on antibiotics or dead. Water around them is ill and sad. I might be outside the cage, but this is overkill. Where are my seapels? Sails are impressive, bottomless. While the stocks in Japan, the sharks lounge in their yachts. It's regatta every day. I won't last. I'm practically bycatch. Thank you. Next up is Joe.
Thank you, Karina, and hi everyone. And yeah, thanks to Kath for making this all happen. This is a poem I'm going to read. It's really about slowing down in a way, remembering to pay attention. I think we could say that speed is the enemy of connection, the enemy of compassion. So I felt moved to write this, I think partly as a result of my meditation practice. Yeah, so this is called Remember. Let's rest a while so things can grow that are stunted and thinned by the speed of our lives and the desperate tug of urges like, have you checked your phone recently? Or how productive are you being right now? Breathe deeply and slowly. Follow the path by the river. Watch ripples dance around the reeds. Listen to the trees talk in whispers. Look up for a moment. Let your vision expand into blue and loosen your soul. Do all this in rush hour. Practice seeing the glitter of sunlight through unwashed windows, bright blades of grass announcing life between the paving slabs, trees in blossom beside the building site, a mouse skittering across the road. And soften your heart so it hears the cries of the world, tender to the touch of dying seabirds, of trees falling in forests far away, of a mother holding tight to the baby she cannot feed, of a future getting shorter by the day. Take the hand of someone you did not see. Join the circle. Go forward into shadows and into light. Let the voice of the earth move through your bones, that long forgotten joy. Until your feet move again to the humming song, dancing you back, flowing into ritual and grace. Until they return one by one, the colors, the voices, the places, and the leaf-strewn paths, opening before you now, like forgotten friends. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, it's great to hear some mindfulness and a bit of love there as well, because when we were writing, that was a very much part of it, wasn't it? Looking after ourselves and others and being more mindful. So we've got more readers now. Anne Enith Cooper is in London. Charlene Patabaraman is in Dundee, Scotland. I hope I did that right, Charlene. And then we've got Ness Owen, who is in Ynysmore in North Wales. So welcome, Anne. Anne's up next.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Kath. The challenge has been really great, and it's such an honour to be here. This poem I'm going to read, it's kind of to the theme of learning, one of the things we looked at. And I fervently believe another world is possible. So this is called Who Knew? Who knew I could make a sink shine with just a squeezed lemon? Who knew I could grow lettuces, bell peppers and runner beans in an urban garden? Who knew that the soil was not just dirt, but a simmering mass of life, mites, nematodes and the mycelium that wraps itself around the world in an underground network, supporting biodiversity, sinking carbon? Who knew the wildflowers grown from seeds I'd sown would attract butterflies from far off desert lands? Who knew my lavender and chamomile scented bold washing powder was made by Procter & Gamble, who also sell Ariel, Fairy, Daz and Dreft? who knew the largest owners of Procter & Gamble stock are BlackRock and Vanguard, not me, who knew these investors also own Aladdin, a trading algorithm that shapes global markets, a network of 5,000 supercomputers designed for the world's money spinners, no less, who knew these supercomputers have a higher carbon footprint than air travel. Who knew? Thank you. And over to Charlene.
Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you, Kath, for this opportunity. It's been a great journey and a fabulous experience writing with all the wonderful poets in this forum. So today I'm going to present a poem which was inspired by my visit to the Natural History Museum in London. And it's based on an exhibit that I saw there. The birdhouse. Hammer nailing into wood echoes, jackdaw, jackdaw. As iron collides with iron, weight and heat, kinetic, pierce through the hardwood door, being eased into the mouth of the four walls, through which I enter the birdhouse, or the ghost call of jackdaws. Inside, cavernous walls carefully illuminate hummingbirds, hundreds of hummingbirds, each beak discreet, iridescent wings of purple, green, blue hues, magnificently lit, mid-flight, frozen. Among the geese, platypus, eagle, owl, vulture, fowl, duck, pheasant, chaffinch, and peregrines, not one feather frames the wind. My eyes seek a canopied forest, the wood smelling of sap slowly consumed by phloem-feeding hemipterans. Sheath of dew, veiling the morning milk oozing from a leaf, broken from its stalk. And birds, millions of birds, roosting, feeding, singing, thriving, making a noisy spectacle of life. But the walls close in. The birdhouse reduces in size. My hands grow talons. My clavicles sprout wings. My mouth is a beak. I'm clawing my way out, wings thrashing, fumbling, knocking through glass, pushing through bush and branch. I'm all skin inside the bramble, breath hooked inside the paws. I hear the sounds, shuffling among the broken sherds. A forest of the dead, whispering. A vision, the wooden door turning into an oak, branches, growing fresh limbs, leaves awakening, creepers climbing, and hundreds of hummingbirds unlatching from the walls, lifting from the ground, rising through the birdhouse, an anthem of wings, honking, gurgling, piping, hooting, hissing, growling, quacking, singing, crowing. The walls collapse over a growing forest of oak, birch, and sycamore. I hear the jackdaws call out, jackdaw, jackdaw. Thank you. Coming up next is Ness Owen.
Noswaith dda. Thank you, Shalini. Great to be here, and thanks to everybody for this absolutely wonderful opportunity. I'm Ness Owen, I'm from Ynys Môn, which is an island off northwest Wales. My piece was inspired by one of the wonderful prompts about a group of animals drawing attention to ecocide. And the ecocide I chose, which is our local one, Nature Reserve Penrhos, which is under threat of development, unfortunately, a much loved place. So this is a what if poem. Then the geese turned up. It wasn't till the Brent geese arrived, dark bellies ravenous for eels, that we really started to worry. With their constant ronking and cronking, they weren't about to give up their winter bounty. Someone said they fly by night, use the moon and stars like they owned them, never left no one behind, like a skein of true soldiers. But worse still, these poets, they always want to write about them. Reasoning fell on covered years. Why would you deny us a high quality destination leisure village, 500 chalets, luxury spa, water park? So we lose a few old trees. We will of course replant them. Jet skiers have rights too. And anyway, you tootle off every summer. A wheel of lapwings heckled past. Some of us are here to stay. Little redbreasts had been so easy to coax, eating out of our hands, posing for a photo or two, all for mealworm promise. We reminded woodpecker of damage already done and a bit about glass houses. We resisted the rowdy oyster catcher's taunt. Leave us be, build somewhere else. So easy to ignore distant red glares from unlicensed cottle beds. But these geese, they kept coming back. They wouldn't let it go, uniting with haunting curlew and solitary sandpipers. Their honeyed air made all the calls we'd heard before harsh compared to this. And all this time, the mud flats sang. The tide swept in, sea lavender bloomed and withered. Sea pink carpeted her mid-mash ground. Ragworms carried on their business regardless. Diolch, thank you.
Oh, I love all the birds in that last serendipity, isn't it? Sometimes when you put things together. Great work, everybody. We've got one more group of readers. We've got Linda Goulden, who's in Derbyshire in the UK, Derbyshire in the UK, my Australian accent. Suzanne Iupa, who's in Mid Wales. Katrina Ibaninska, who is in Malaga in Spain, and Belle Selkie Lovelock, who is back in Wales. So there's a few people from Wales today. Yeah, over to you, Linda.
Hello. Yes, I'm a Scot living in Derbyshire at the edge of the Peak District. And I've really enjoyed doing the climate change. It has been a challenge. And I did want to write seriously and knowledgeably and persuasively. But when it came to choosing a poem for tonight, the prompt that Maya Chowdhury gave us to really listen to wildlife, well, I listened to bats through bat detectors, and somehow that encouraged me to be a little bit playful. So here's my poem called Bat Calls. We're megabats, we're microbats, we're batty yang and yin. We're white, we're black, we're honey gold, we're grey, we're earthy brown. Though some of you are young enough to catch a squeak or two, seeing little, hearing less applies to most of you. But should you once desire to learn, to recognize we're near, then stop. Slow down our bat calls until they fit your ear. The horseshoe whistles like the tuner in your granny's old wireless. The noctule's nocturne shrieks like DAB on the signal loss. The soprano's solo is a rolling, thrilling click. The pipistrelle's a prelude to some running, drumming cheek. But just suppose you listen through a kind of babelfish. Instead of clicks and whistles, imagine hearing this. Some of us eat spiders, and some of us eat scorpions, and some of us eat little crabs, and some of us eat fish. Some of us eat nectar, and some of us eat pollen, and some of us eat fruit, and some of us eat flowers. And some of us eat tree frogs, and some of us eat lizards, and some of us eat baby birds, and some of us eat shrews, and some of us bite ear holes, and some of us bite arse holes, and some of us lick nostrils, and some of us suck toes. But most of us eat midges, and most of us eat beetles, and most of us eat moths and flies, and none of us eat you. Midge and beetle, moth, mosquito, daddy longlegs, fly, fly, fly. Midge and beetle, moth, mosquito, daddy longlegs, fly, fly, fly. If you want to keep us batty, build more ponds and watch us fly. And now Suzanne.
I love bats. Thank you, Linda. That was brilliant. How do you follow that? My name's Suzanne, and you can hear that I'm American, but I live in mid Wales. I've been living in Wales for 32 years. And this poem I'm going to share was the first poem I wrote for the challenge this time around. And it's inspired by taking part in a food project in mid Wales called Plant Food, and also my work with some women that worked planting food in Powys during the war. It's called Planting Fields. In those days when we couldn't touch each other, instead, we dug the earth. The spacer we passed marked the ideal measure in black mark, tuber, here, past the spacer, squint sunlight to make another, wood with raw black, no touch, but we can pass the spacer, across furrows of soil, field reclaimed by one horse, clan iron, the valley tinkles the nant like a bell. Ragged field edge still sodden with wool musk, sheep gone havad, marker, space, them, out. Kneel with boots the same side of a turning, here. Holy gravity of food heating each of our palms. What do you think of potatoes? Lay it out. Eyes. A whole duck egg found brought by the jaw of a fox. Holy burying, the cow's gut, horse dung, spacer. Enough cachet of futures to feed an army, drag a laundry basket, heap replenishing. A worn sack remembers shapes. Trowels in our hands, stabbing in the under magic. The original women here tatting the brawn. Not too long ago, they, them land girls, tinkle in the field. The cottage hospitals were the last ones sang to us of dowels, away from home, sacks and sacks of seed, making their mark. Naughty call-respond ditties about how they daren't touch each other in the dark. And next is Katrina.
Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here and thank you for all the beautiful sounds and images. So I think what is one of the biggest challenges for me when writing about climate change is just the overwhelming scale. So in this poem, I try to take you on a little journey from something very nearby to a bigger picture and back to something that we can embrace. It's called Circulation. A deep snore of our dog, even though I know that the tiniest move will steer her. I sit still. I let her root my leg until it tingles, till there is nothing more but the slow, restricted circulation. I think about what else struggles to flow. Seasons out of tune, an ecosystem without the buzzing of bees, a drop from a tree falling into a rainbow puddle on the concrete, unable to soak back into the ground. Dry rivers, a song of 52 hertz whale left without a response. Godwits, lured into quitting their oversea journeys. A seagull hungry enough to bite into a plastic dog's toy. An interrupted conversation in a declining language. Words that can't bond anymore. I call you so you can also hear peaceful snoring on my lap. As we circle around, the idea of returns. Thank you.
Oh, I think it's me now.
Yep, it's you, Belle.
Yeah. Okay. I feel really touched by that poem, and I felt really stirred and moved by what I've heard, kind of feeling our entanglement in the grief-soaked, joyful, funny, and yeah, feeling the power and the spells we're casting. So I'm going to read a poem, which is an invocation or a prayer or an act of faith. It's inspired by Craig Santos Perez's recycling, and it's a recycling of the Lord's Prayer. And I hope it's respectful. It's meant to be, and also balancing. It's called the Lady's Prayer. And I always name place and season as co-authors because I have a belief in our inseparability from Earth that is very strong in me. I'm going to read this as a call and response, and Patricia has kindly agreed to be the responder, so you might want to unmute. And I would invite you also, you may want to repeat it. You'll notice it's in the same, it has the same rhythm as the Lord's Prayer, so the rhythm alone will be familiar to those who know the Lord's Prayer in English, at least, not in Cymraeg or any other languages. I forgot to mention, I'm in Cymru, that's how you say it, Kath, Cymru. Okay, so yeah, I think I'll start. The Lady's Prayer, and the place is Amroth, and the season is Imulk. Our mother,
Our mother,
who is a planet,
who is a planet,
let us be humbled.
let us be humbled.
Your forest gone,
Your forest gone,
your web undone.
your web undone.
Our space debris in heaven
our
space,
space debris in heaven.
We take too much.
We take too much.
We overkill.
We overkill.
Yet still you gift us abundance.
Yet still gift us abundance.
May we always be boundless.
May we always also be boundless.
In our loving.
In our loving.
Tempt us towards what you desire.
Tempt us towards what you desire.
Allure us to our true pole star of soul.
Allure us to our true pole star of soul.
For then we are the wild dawn.
For then we are the wild dawn.
Your bees hum and your bird song.
Your bees hum and your bird song.
As it always has been.
As it always has been.
So it is.
So it is.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, super special. And there's something wonderful about getting that call and respond right across different parts of the UK as well, that we can do that. That was great. I really loved hearing that, actually. At the end there, it seemed very fitting to have a prayer at the end of our readers, but just one more reader, which is me. And I'm just going to read a quick poem before we get to our fantastic guest, Craig Santos Perez. Very exciting to have him today. So hang on for that. One more poem and then we'll have Craig. So I've got this poem. We've talked a lot about having conversations about climate change, and sometimes the weird conversations you have about climate change. And my background is very much as an environmental campaigner in Australia for many years and writer. And I've had a lot of weird things said about being a greenie, which is obviously often a derogatory word, and blaming the greenies for not doing this or that right, when actually often they are the people who are giving up voluntary time and their lives and everything else, in some places in the world putting their lives on the line, actually, to try and draw attention to things, to try and change things. So this came out of a little bit of energy on that front, but also was a bit of fun. And I'm pleased to say it's going to be published in the Best Australian Poems anthology, which is coming out in very, very soon. So you'll be able to read it in there as well. Blame the greenies. If they hadn't dressed like hippies, didn't talk mumbo jumbo one love, had shunned suits, catastrophized too early, if they hadn't done those twirling fire stick dances look too happy, too radical, had so many piercings, grew dreadlocks, presumed they were superior, kept telling us what to do, been anti-progress, anti-good times, wanted to ban everything, hung around in crowds, failed university, slept in, partied all the time, and if they hadn't been so middle class, mainstream, out of touch, so finger-pointing, smart, puritanical, fanaticis, noisy, made into a problem, argumentative, if they hadn't been so hysterical, bleak, stubborn, blocked roads, got arrested, refused to have children, if they had just been more honest, hadn't produced so many dull reports, talked jargon, been too quiet, too small in number to be useful, if they hadn't marginalised themselves, covert, driven cars, so hypocritical, the wrong people at the wrong time, if they hadn't been anti-science, rejected proper jobs like MPs or CEOs, if they hadn't been so naive, irrational, if they hadn't been useless at planning, smoked too much, given up easily, tasted the good life, got trendy, or too damn sensible, if they hadn't got older, had families, full-on careers, been selfish, weak-willed, complicated, wanted to do things their way, impractical, if they had just been smarter. And why didn't they just get Bieber and Beyonce involved? Branson and Musk, if they hadn't been so brazen, coming right up to us and telling us straight in our faces. So there's my view on something. See what you make of that. You can read it in Best Australian Poems, which comes out later in the year. Now, yes, so I'm going to put in the chat too a little bit before we move on. Just a quick note before we move on to Craig, coming on next year, there will be some workshops in the first part of the year. It'll be in the morning and in the evening, so you can choose your time zone if you're in Australia or UK or in the US. You can choose what suits you the best. And I've also put a donation link in the feed, because we have had some donations, which is great. And that means that many of you who can't normally afford to participate will be able to let me know, and you will be some pay what you can or free passes for some of those people. Thank you to all of you for that, because you've really made that happen as well. So I just dropped Craig's book, which is why I just popped down to get it off the floor. There we are. Look at that. So that's his latest book, Habitat Threshold, which I really recommend. And we do some poems from Craig's book and from an earlier book in the challenge. So Craig has been one of our guest poets during the challenge. He did provide us with a writing prompt here, as well as doing the reading here. And he is a professor at the English Department of the University of Hawaii. He is an Indigenous Chamorro from the Pacific island of Guam. He's a brilliant poet, scholar, editor, publisher, essayist, critic, artist, environmentalist, political activist. He does all these things. It's incredible. He's also been, I think, a really well-known across the globe environmental poet now for many years, with countless awards. And I think he's helped forge new ways in writing about the climate crisis. And it's really kind of given me permission, I think, to write in new ways too, and to look at things differently. So thank you. It's really, he's really been an inspiration to me personally. And this is what Linda Hogan says, another Indigenous writer says about Craig. He's a writer I seriously watch. He includes a variety of environmentally important writing seamlessly combined with history, politics, and familial. So it gives me incredible pleasure to introduce Craig Santos Perez, zooming in from Hawaii. Welcome, Craig. So great to have you with us.
Well, hafade and aloha. Thank you so much, Kath, for that very, very kind introduction, and for, of course, teaching my work and inviting me to share my poems today. Thank you to all the readers. It's still morning time here in Hawaii, and so this was such an amazing event to wake up to and to be really inspired, called to action, and to be invited to listen more deeply to the earth and all its beautiful species. And thank you as well to Belle for that prayer. I love to hear other recyclings across the globe. That was really beautiful. I am going to read some poems from my book, Habitat Threshold. And I want to begin with perhaps the first poem I wrote about climate change. This was back in 2015, and it takes place here in Hawaii, and it's titled Rings of Fire. We host our daughter's first birthday party during the hottest April in history. Outside, my dad grills meat over charcoal. Inside, my mom steams rice and roasts vegetables. They've traveled from California, where drought carves trees into tinder. Paradise is burning. When our daughter's first fever spiked, the doctor said it's a sign she's fighting infection. Bloodshed surges with global temperatures which know no borders. If her fever doesn't break, the doctor continued, take her to the emergency room. Airstrikes detonate hospitals in Yemen, Iraq, Afghanistan, South Sudan. When she crowned, my wife said, it felt like rings of fire. Volcanoes erupt along Pacific fault lines. Sweltering heat waves scorch Australia. Forests in Indonesia are razed for palm oil plantations. Their ashes flock like ghost birds to our distant rib cages. Still, I crave an unfiltered cigarette, even though I quit years ago and my breath no longer smells like my grandpa's overflowing ashtray. His parched cough still punctures the black lungs of cancer and denial. If she struggles to breathe, the doctor advised, give her an asthma inhaler. But tonight, we sing happy birthday and blow out the candles together. Smoke trembles as if we all exhaled the same flammable wish. So as I mentioned, that poem was written 7 years ago, and sadly, every April for my daughter's birthday, she's 8 now, seems to be the hottest in history, always breaking record temperatures here in the Pacific. This next poem takes us to one of my daughter's favorite places, the aquarium here in Waikiki on the island where we live. It's called A Sonnet at the Edge of the Reef. And of course, since all of you are in England, I had to read a sonnet. I had to read a sonnet. A sonnet at the edge of the reef. We dip our hands into the outdoor reef exhibit and touch sea cucumber and red urchin as butterfly fish swim by. A docent explains, once a year after the full moon, when tides swell to a certain height and salt water reaches the perfect temperature, only then will the ocean cue coral polyps to spawn in synchrony a galaxy of gametes, which dances to the surface, fertilizes, opens, forms larvae, roots to seafloor, and grows generation upon generation. At home, we read a children's book, The Great Barrier Reef, to our daughter snuggling between us in bed. We don't mention corals bleaching, reared in labs or frozen. And isn't our silence too a kind of shelter? And so if you've never seen coral spawning, highly recommend maybe go on YouTube and search for it. It's such a beautiful phenomena. And sadly, of course, there's so many coral bleaching events around the Pacific. All right, another place my daughter loves to go to is the Honolulu Zoo. And since several of you wrote poems about animals, I wanted to share a few with you as well. This was written after we went to the zoo, and it was World Elephants Day. And this is entitled Blood Ivory. When we reach the elephant enclosure, I lift our daughter up so she can see them playing in shallow ponds. Look, I say, they love the water just like you. Today, 96 elephants are being massacred across Africa's scarred savanna. Armed poachers surround the herds who stomp, trumpet, and encircle their calves. Bullets, those small human tusks, bite through thick, wrinkled skin. Do the men still feel awe or majesty, or do they only feel their own awful poverty as they sever the incisors once used to split bark and forage? Warlords will sell this white gold to be carved into jewelry, relics, and art, then smuggled across the planet, our man-made elephant graveyard. This year, 35,000 will be slain. Our daughter waves goodbye to them as we walk towards the exit. Do we build zoos to save what we've sacrificed, to display what we dominate, or to cage our own wild urge to kill every breathing being? Our daughter plays with a stuffed elephant doll in the gift shop. Look, I say, it has ears, eyes, and a mouth, just like you. She touches its tusks, smiles, than touches her own teeth. Okay, this next poem was also written several years ago on World Refugee Day, and it specifically was about the Syrian refugee crisis. But of course, I wanted to share it because obviously there are so many refugee crises around the world, and of course also where you folks live. Care. Our daughter wakes from her nap and cries. I pick her up, press her against my chest and whisper, "Daddy's here, Daddy's here." Here is the island of Oahu, 8,500 miles from Syria. But what if Pacific trade winds suddenly became flames and shrapnel indiscriminately barreling towards us? What if shadows cast upon our windows aren't plumeria tree branches, but soldiers and terrorists marching? Daddy's here, Daddy's here, I whisper. Would we reach the Mediterranean in time? Am I strong enough to straighten my legs into a mast balanced with the pull and drift of the currents? Am I brave enough to bear her across the razor wires of foreign countries and racial hatred? Could I plead, please help us? Please just let us pass. Please, we aren't suicide bombs. Could I keep walking if my feet crack like halabi pepper fields after 5 years of drought, after this drought of humanity? Daddy's here, Daddy's here. Trains and buses rock back and forth, back and forth, back and forth to detention centers. But what if our desperate boat capsizes? Could I inflate my body into a buoy to hold her above rough waves? Daddy's here, Daddy. Will drowning be the last lullaby of the sea? Or will we carry each other towards the horizon of care? I notice in many of your poems, you two also talked about care and caring for the planet, for animals, and of course for each other across all our many differences. Okay, just two more poems. This next one also is about animals and about birds in particular. I know there's many bird poems today. This is dedicated to a native Hawaiian bird called the Kauai o'o, which is a kind of honey creeper. And sadly, this particular bird was last heard here in the islands in 1987. It's called The Last Safe Habitat. I don't want our daughter to know that Hawaii is the bird extinction capital of the world. I don't want her to walk around the island feeling haunted by tree roots buried under concrete. I don't want her to fear the invasive predators who slither, pounce, bite, swallow, disease, and multiply. I don't want her to see paintings and photographs of birds she'll never witness in the wild. I don't want her to imagine their bones in dark museum drawers. I don't want her to hear their voice recordings on the internet. I don't want her to draw a timeline with the years each was first collected and last sighted. I don't want her to learn about the Kauai o'o, who was observed atop a flowering ohia tree, calling for a mate day after day, season after season, because he didn't know he was the last of his kind. Until one day, he disappeared forever into a nest of avian silence. I don't want our daughter to calculate how many miles of fencing is needed to protect the endangered birds that remain. I don't want her to realize The most serious causes of extinction can't be fenced out. I want to convince her that extinction is not the end. I want to convince her that extinction is just a migration to the last safe habitat on Earth. I want to convince her that our winged relatives, I want to convince her that our winged relatives have arrived safely to their destination, a wondrous island with a climate we can never change, and a rainforest fertile with seeds and song. My final poem is kind of like Belle's poem, is also a call and response. And it was written several years ago in support of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. You might have heard about this group of Native Americans who were fighting to protect their waters from the construction of an oil pipeline in the US. And so I wrote this poem to kind of connect water issues in North America to the Pacific and then around the world. The poem itself is called Chanting the Waters. And I'm going to ask if Kath could unmute and be my respondent for this poem. Yeah, okay.
Trying to find it. What page are we on? Do I need to know that?
No, you don't need to know that. All you need to do is when I say the word say, you say water is life.
Okay.
Okay, chanting the waters. Say
water is life.
Because our bodies are 60% water. Because my wife labored for 24 hours through contracting waves. Because water breaks forth from shifting tectonic plates. Say
water is life.
Because amniotic fluid is 90% water. Because she breathed and breathed and breathed. Because our lungs are 80% water. Because our daughter crowned like a new island. Say
water is life.
Because we tell creation stories about water. Because our language flows from water. Because our words are islands writ on water. Because it takes more than 3 gallons of water to make a single sheet of paper. Say
water is life.
Because water is the next oil. Because 180,000 miles of US oil pipelines leak every day. Because we wage war over gods and water and oil. Say
water is life.
Because our planet is 70% water. Because only 3% of that is fresh water. Because it takes 2 gallons of water to refine 1 gallon of gasoline. Because it takes 20 gallons of water to make a pound of plastic. Because the average American water footprint is 2,000 gallons a day. Say
water is life.
Because 1 billion people lack access to drinking water. Because women and children walk 4 miles every day to gather clean water and deliver it home. Say
water is life.
Because our bones are 30% water. Because if you lose 5% of your body's water, you become feverish. Because our bodies won't survive a week without water. Say
water is life.
Because corporations privatize, dam, and bottle our waters. Because plantations divert our waters. Because animal slaughterhouses consume our waters. Because pesticides, chemicals, lead, and waste poison our waters. Say
water is life.
Because they bring their bulldozers and drills and drones. Because we bring our feathers and lei and sage and shells and canoes and hashtags and totems. Because they call us savage and primitive and riots. Because we bring our treaties and the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Because they bring their banks and politicians and paychecks and pepper spray and bullets. Because we bring our songs and schools and prayers and chants and ceremonies. Because we say stop, keep the oil in the ground. Because they say shut up and vanish, but we are not moving. Because we bring all our relations and all our generations and all our live streams. Say
water is life.
Because our drumming sounds like rain after drought echoing against taut skin. Because our skin is 60% water. Say
water is life.
because every year millions of children die from waterborne diseases, because every day thousands of children die from waterborne diseases, because by the end of this poem, 5 children will die from waterborne diseases. Say,
water is life.
because our daughter loves playing in the ocean, because someday she'll ask, where does the ocean end? Because we'll point to the dilating horizon. Say,
water is life.
because our eyes are 95% water, because we'll tell her ocean has no end, because sky and clouds lift ocean, because mountains embrace ocean into blessings of rain, because ocean, sky, rain fills aquifers and lakes, because ocean, sky, rain, lake flows into the Missouri River, because ocean, sky, rain, lake, river returns to the Pacific and connects us to our cousins at Standing Rock, because our blood is 90% water. Say,
water is life.
because our hearts are 75% water, because I'll teach our daughter our people's word for water, hanum, 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 so the sound of water will always carry her home. Say,
water is life.
say,
water is life.
say,
water is life.
Thank you. Mahalo, everyone.
Oh, I got the last word.
Yes, you did. And I love thinking about the way, yes, thinking about how water connects us here in the Pacific, across the Atlantic, to all of you folks over there. And so thank you so much again for listening and for sharing your poems. I feel so inspired. And thank you, Kath, again, for bringing us all together.
Thank you so much. Is that in your book, or is that a new poem that you just read?
Yeah, that's all those are in the book. Yes,
so someone just asked what the name of the book is in the chat. So Habitat Threshold. Thank you so much, Craig. Thank you for getting up early as well. I forgot that it was very early in the morning over there. So it's so great to have you. Very moving, insightful, and very vulnerable too, isn't it? And I was particularly struck by this line in one of the early poems you read, which made me think of all of us, that as if we all exhaled the same flammable wish. And I think that's what we have, a sense of what I feel we've had this evening. So thank you so much, everyone. Don't forget, you can sign up to next year's workshops. And there will be some discounts for people, or free for people who can't afford to pay because of your donations. And just let's thank everybody. Let's thank Kate Potts, who's been fantastic on Facebook, our guest poet, encouraging people along. Shout out to all of our guest poets, as well as Craig, Karen McCarthy-Wolf, Isani Doshi, Claire Pollard, Maya Chowdhury, who was mentioned earlier, and Ellen Van Neeren in Australia, another Indigenous poet. Thank you to all our incredible readers tonight, everyone who made up the community that has been the Climate of Change Poetry Challenge in 2022. It's been no small thing, with 140 odd poets involved, and hundreds of poems written. So thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you to John for his support, and thanks again to the Emergence Foundation, without whom none of this would have been possible. Big shout out to Heather, and it's so great to have you, Heather. It's a real treat to have you here. Do put comments and feedback and gratitude of any kind in the chat. That's most welcome. And don't forget, if you did read tonight, we've got a separate debrief on Zoom if you want to join that. But do you want to say anything, Heather, before we go? Would you like to say anything? Because it's really lovely to have you here, Heather.
I can't tell you, it's been just a joy and a privilege, and that your voices, you're just the depth and the heart and the calling to slow down, to listen, to look, and it's just been beautiful. And Emergence Foundation is so happy that through this help, this has been able to happen, because it's exactly what we want, what we care about. So thank you. Fabulous.
Loved it.
Oh, thank you, Heather. And a big thank you from everyone here, from everyone on the challenge over the last few months, to you, Heather, and to the Emergence Foundation. Everybody, I know you work really hard over there to make it all happen and to make things like this happen. So we are all part of the climate of change, aren't we? And change is coming for sure. So let's try and make it as conscious and as positive and as full of positive community as we possibly can. Thank you so much to everyone. Good night, and I hope to see you again next year. Thanks, everyone.